My name is David Hirsch, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Zoom call that we're doing on employment and finding purpose. And on behalf of the 21st Century Dads Board, as well as volunteers, thanks for joining the Zoom call this evening. And I'd like to also introduce my partner in crime, Tom Couch, who's at the Zoom station tonight. And we work on a weekly basis on the podcast, the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. He's the producer and I'm the host. So thank you again for being involved with the program tonight, Tom.
Yeah.
And what I'd like to do is make some brief introductory remarks, then ask each of our presenters to do the same. And the topic will take us in a number of different directions. And then at the end, we'll open it up to questions for those that are participating. So I'm thrilled to be hosting tonight's Zoom call on the topic of finding employment and purpose. This is one of the most important issues that a family faces when they have a young adult or adult who has differences, whether that's a special need or just some type of disability. And I'm really pleased to present just three of the dads who are eminently qualified to talk about this topic. And I'm going to ask Mike Kohler of Gainesville, Georgia, to go first and talk about his experience from a personal perspective and then a professional perspective about his special needs and treats. That's Kneads and treats, which is a bakery. And then I'm going to ask Jose Velasco, who is joining us from Houston, Texas, who runs the Autism at Work program for SAP, a very unique program. And I know that you'll enjoy learning more about that. And then batting in the third position, by his choice, is Randy Lewis of Walgreens fame. Randy is a retired senior executive from Walgreens, and a dozen or so years ago, they built this state-of-the-art facility, distribution facility in South Carolina. And they really revolutionized the way companies, big companies, Fortune 500 companies, think about disability and employment. So with no further ado, Michael Kohler, the Zoom stage is yours.
Thank you guys for joining tonight. I apologize for the non-video. I'm in the process of moving my home and we still don't have internet installed at the house. Otherwise I'd be on my laptop, which is a little bit better than the desktop I'm using here at work. But again, my name is Michael Kohler. I've been married to my wife, Tempa, for approximately 36 years. I have two children, Ashley, who is 35, and then Bradley, my son, who is 30, has Fragile X syndrome. For 7 years, we didn't know what he had. And then we had him tested and discovered it was Fragile X syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that causes anything from very moderate to very severe mental affliction. He's pretty moderate, social butterfly. And as he was growing up, as most of the dads on here who've already experienced it or are going to experience it, at the age of 22 here in Gwinnett County, Georgia, the kids age out of county programs that are supported by the school systems and things like that, like Strive and Adapt and work type day programs and things to that. And then the families have to determine what they're going to do, for the success of their child. And I had at one point achieved a status of, I guess you would call it the assistant director for a special needs group playing baseball. I had 208 different baseball players from 5 to 55 from every different type of ability, disability, what have you. And the conversation was the same around the ball field. What are we going to do when our kids age out? My wife has been a baker, cake decorator since the age of 13. So roughly 40 years. She's not here, so I can tell how old she is. No matter how old she gets, though, I'll always be older. I'm a little bit older, not much, but same thing there. So as Bradley got closer to that age, we thought, well, let's start a bakery. Let's let you do the bakery. Bradley can work with you. Even though my last name is Kohler, I'm not Kohler Plumbing or Kohler Engines, so I'm not independently wealthy. So we weren't quite sure what to do. And the more we talked about it, the more we prayed about it, looked around, we kind of started going in a slightly different direction to where my wife she had seen an article with a young child at a food cooperative that it was his birthday. It was his 5th birthday. And he said, when they asked him what he wanted for his birthday, he said, well, I just want a real birthday cake. You know, he didn't say an Xbox or a bicycle or something like that. He said he just wanted a real birthday cake. And my wife woke up and said, I've got it. You know, let's do cakes for kids that can't afford them. Let's work with foster care, DFACs, food cooperatives, things to that nature. And let's get special needs to help us. That kind of lit a light bulb for me, because dealing with the less fortunate was more of a 501c3 type of approach. So we checked into how to start a nonprofit. You know, what could we do to get cakes into the hands of these kids that just wanted a birthday cake, you know, because cake is a luxury item. Just like the old adage, you know, let them eat cake. That's the truth. You know, I mean, those of us who probably never even had to worry about it always had a birthday cake. So as things continued to develop and go, we got started back in 2014. We developed a nonprofit. We, you know, leased a little place on Lawrenceville downtown square, and kind of took off running. We were blessed tremendously with all types of media, all the different news stations and things like that picked up on it. But what they picked up on was that we were bringing special needs in to help us. Not the fact that we were giving free cakes, but that we were giving special needs adults a sense of empowerment, a sense of pride. So that's what developed one of our 2 core programs, which is the education, training, and employment of special needs adults, because it wasn't just something for them to do. Our goal was to get them paid. So we started paying minimum wage, and our first paid employee, come to find out, actually, he was a young man that we didn't know he had any disorders or anything like that, but turns out he had a heart condition. He was where he needed to be. We just discovered today that he's been finally diagnosed after 29 years with a variation of Tourette syndrome. So he was in the right place. But our second employee was a young man in a wheelchair named Tori. And that was back in 2014. And since that time, we have 29 that are employed now as of today. And I have 205 on a waiting list. But it was, we developed all different types of programs focusing around not just a bakery environment. We, you know, teaching all types of skills, laundry folding that could be used, you know, a hospital, motel, hotel. We sticker boxes, we sticker bags, we sticker just about everything that you can think of that comes through the door. It's a motor skill that gets taught. It's repetition. We do a lot of cupcake pick sorting. It helps with sorting colors, sorting styles, shapes, sizes. Those are types of jobs that, you know, you can use those skills elsewhere. Shredding documents, stocking shelves, assistant bakers, decorators. We now have folks that basically run the whole front of shop. I don't go up front hardly any at all anymore. We have varying degrees of cerebral palsy, autism, Down syndrome, you know, Fragile X, quite a gamut. And the way we operate is, you know, we'll take the first person on the list, bring them in, have a little interview. A lot of times we have to talk with the, you know, legal guardian or caregiver, because sometimes the folks we have nonverbal, limited motor skills, might be in a wheelchair or walker, has to have a parapro or job coach or aide at all times. So we just kind of look and see what is the ability. What do they enjoy? What do we have? And we kind of fine tune the different things that we have to just kind of work with that and then move on. Occasionally, it may not work out, but for the most part, we've got some folks that have been with us now for 5 and 6 years. We don't push them on. It's not a training program. There are a lot of training programs out there, but part of the problem is once trained, you know, it's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then go find a job. Well, that's part of the problem is not finding jobs. 80% of the folks that we have on staff probably aren't going to get a job opportunity elsewhere. It's challenging, as most of you all know. But like I say, we're up to 29. We've been blessed. After 3.5 years in business, we achieved the status to where God blessed us with a 12,000 square foot facility. We have a 2,600 square foot kitchen, which most commercial kitchen people come here and they're in awe. They're like, how can you have such a large kitchen? But it is designed solely for those workstations that have the wheelchair and walker capability, that they go up and down to different heights. We have them spread apart. So the whole COVID thing, we were already 5 to 6 feet apart with our workstations anyway. But most of my folks, 80%, had to shelter in place until June 12th. So we were blessed with the PPP grant or loan. It'll turn into a grant because we used it solely for payroll. So basically I told all my folks, well, guess what? You're on paid vacation until June 13th, and then called them and said, okay, governor says you can come back to work. You'll need to come back to work to get a check. But like I said, we do mainly cakes, sweet shop, but we train all the different aspects of customer service, packing, shipping. We don't do a lot of shipping yet, but we started some eBay during this time to help a little bit. So we're developing jobs there. I've got 5 folks now that can do computer work. We just kind of, once they get in, we get through and we try and start seeing what skills are there and where the passion is and how can we fine tune that. I had a special needs young man who actually helped us get our online store started and rolling. That was pretty amazing. So that's kind of it in a big nutshell. And then I'll open it up for questions later, as you said, David.
Michael, thank you for that inspiring presentation. And it's a real testimony to you and Tempa, your wife, and to God, really, that you've been able to create these opportunities for these young adults. And I'm hoping that you'll continue to be blessed with the opportunity to continue to grow your business and hire more individuals. So let's switch to the SAP Autism at Work program and Jose Velasco down in Houston, Texas.
Thank you very much, David, and thanks everybody for having me today. It's always great to see familiar faces. Randy, we crossed paths physically for the first time in November at the Ernie Els Center for Autism, and always glad to see you again. So where do I start? Maybe I'll start with 2013 and where we were as a family. I think it's an important starting point for the story, if you will. So I have been with SAP today about 22 years. In 2014, I found myself and of course my wife in this very difficult situation because our 2 kids in the autism spectrum, at the time they were about 16 and 17 plus, were in that quote unquote stage of transition where they were going to move to something else and we didn't exactly know what. My son was wrapping up high school and he was wrapping up under the minimal program, and we knew that there were some challenges there. We also knew that he needed to do something, after high school, and we were very concerned when the services stopped in high school, what would happen after that, because it seems like, after you go through kindergarten and then middle school and junior high and high school, it seems like the services start diminishing. And when you get to junior college or trade school or something, they are, I wouldn't say non-existent, but they are significantly less than what you see in high school and below in K-12. So again, it was a very challenging time for us as a family, particularly for me to see what was going to happen. We start asking ourselves, of course, all this type of questions: what's going to happen when I am no longer here? And we realized, my wife and I, that the secret was going to be to try to find them the dignity of work. Okay, that's really what it amounted to. We thought that being independent would be great, but having a job would be like an incredible boost. Okay, that's, if anybody had a wish, our wish was for our kids to be able to have a job. Okay, so this is what I would call serendipity. Right around that time, I was vice president of product management at SAP. I was deep in technology, and I was working on the business of business. And one morning, I got up. I work from home largely, so I fired up my laptop and I started checking email, and my wife was going to drop off the kids. The next thing that happened, I read this email, in the top line at SAP, and it said something to the effect of SAP Autism at Work. And I just could not see the connection between this very large company that I work for, that is a software company, and the topic of autism. But there it was. There was an email that said that SAP was launching a program, an intentional program to hire people on the autism spectrum. And I just could not believe my eyes. I mean, it was what I had been hoping that somebody would do. Of course, this was my company doing it. I was just so incredibly proud of working for the company and seeing what I was seeing. But the next thing was, how do I get in on that? Okay, I want to be part of this. So I raised my hand. I sent an email to our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And right around the time when she launched the program, we operate in 190 countries, and just about every location was, fired up, getting correspondence from everywhere around the world, because there was such a high degree of excitement from the community and from educators and from companies and from parents and from individuals on the autism spectrum. We were overwhelmed with the amount of the reaction that we had when we announced the program globally in front of 15,000 customers. Okay, it was not something that we did in a closet, in a pocket. It was announced with all fanfare in front of a very significant number of customers. So you can imagine my excitement, when I saw that, and my willingness to work on this. So I reached out to my senior vice president, whom I had known for quite a while. His name is Helmut Glanzer. I said, Helmut, you follow my trajectory in the company for quite some time. You know about my kids, and this is important for me. I want to be part of this. I want to be a volunteer. So the next thing that happened, he said, why don't you take, 20, 30% of your time and dedicate it to supporting the Autism at Work program. That was a huge thing for me, being able to dedicate, having a block of time. But he looked at me and he said, look, the reality is that you're not gonna have a job at 70% and another one at 30. You're gonna have two jobs at 100%. I know you, and he said, I know you're gonna deep dive into this. You're gonna work weekends until it gets off the ground. And sure thing, I was so excited about the program. And thanks to my wife and my family, they gave me the time to really work on the weekends on this stuff. And within 4 months of launching, we had the first 13 individuals at SAP work and on the autism spectrum working in the United States, 6 individuals in the Bay Area, and the remainder in Philadelphia. So we launched the program literally in 14 weeks in partnership with Specialisterne, a Danish company that had done this before. And it was such a rewarding experience. And to my luck, it caught the attention of media, just like Michael was saying earlier. And that was a huge, wind behind our sails to get the program off the ground and known even within the company. And it caught the attention actually of a board member at SAP, Dr. Vishal Sikka, who was responsible at the time for about 25,000 employees, and who had been my boss when he had probably 500 employees, knew about me and I knew about him. He had family on the autism spectrum as well. So he reached out to me and he said, tell me more about how this program is going. And I said, well, we just got it off the ground. We are right now training the first cohort of the individuals on the spectrum to become software testers, data quality analysts, and software developers at SAP. And he said, I live in Austin. He was in the Bay Area. And he said, can you come to the Bay Area and talk to me about the program? So we toured the training room. I introduced him to our prospects on the autism spectrum. And he was so excited about the program. He said, I want to become the executive sponsor for this program. So having somebody at the board level at SAP saying, I want to become the executive sponsor was just huge for us. And from there, the program took off. Today, the program operates in 16 countries. We have provided approximately 462 opportunities just in the United States. And when I talk about opportunities, I want to break them down for you a little bit. If you look at the original announcement of the Autism at Work program, it read something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, that we would hire individuals in the spectrum in software quality assurance, which is software testing, in software development, data quality analysis. And basically we were, targeting those 3 roles for individuals on the autism spectrum. very quickly we realized that, I mean, we're getting this incredible resumes of people that have backgrounds in supply chain management, in business, in literature. There were doctors, there were chemical engineers, university professors. I mean, it was huge. The amount of people that were interested in the program was very significant, right? And then in some locations, we got high school kids that were interested in joining the program as well. So we would get resumes from kids that were still in high school. I mean, we had the whole spectrum within the spectrum. And what we realized very quickly was that we would not be able to contain the program to just those 3 roles that we initially launched. That's what we knew. Of course, it was part of our core business, which is we're a software company, SAP. So we were hiring people into the core parts of the business, which was very important for us to do. Today, we employ people in 28 different types of roles. And as I was mentioning, we hired people at the beginning in full-time roles. Primarily, okay. Very, very quickly, we realized by talking to our colleagues on the autism spectrum, and of course, for me seeing it at home every day, that many of the people that we hired before did not have an opportunity during the educational years. In other words, when they were in high school, they did not have exposure to an enterprise environment, or even a stepping stone job, okay. So aside from the challenges that folks in the spectrum have related to socialization and communication, there was this disadvantage that they had no exposure whatsoever to an enterprise environment, putting them significantly behind other applicants, even though they may have the skills to be part of a company like ours. So we expanded the program to include contractors and to include also interns as well. So we started getting internship opportunities for folks on the autism spectrum. And it was very interesting because one day we had a special education teacher that came to SAP, huge fancy building, comes into the front door and said, I want to talk to the people that are responsible for the Autism at Work program, with that impetus that only a special education teacher can have, right? So we had a conversation with her, and very quickly the conversation developed into a conversation with all of the special education teachers at her high school and the principal. And it went from a 1-hour conversation to a full-day workshop where at the end, we decided that we would give it a shot to try to bring in high school students on a monthly basis for a period of 6 months so that they could get enterprise exposure on a regular basis at the high school level, okay? And we had a number of mentors from SAP, employee volunteers that would participate in these sessions. And I think it made a significant impact on, or has made a significant impact. We had about 600 all in all opportunities. Remember, we talked about opportunities being 600, including students, including contractors, and including employees. So that's in summary, the program is again in 16 countries. We employ people in 28 different types of roles today. And the program has been around for a good almost 6 years. One thing that I think is important, we have a retention rate of approximately 94% of our colleagues on the autism spectrum. David, back to you.
Well, thank you, Jose, for an enlightening presentation. It's quite remarkable how much you've been able to accomplish in just the last 5 or 6 years. And, you were just the right person at the right time in the right place to help SAP provide these almost 500 opportunities to people on the spectrum. So thank you again for sharing. And last but not least, I'd like to turn the Zoom stage over to my friend and neighbor, Randy Lewis, former Walgreens senior executive who helped pioneer this concept of hiring people with disabilities on a large scale, going back a dozen years ago. Randy, over to you.
Great. The phrase that we usually say, the best for last. I'm here to prove that I'm the exception to that rule. So I think the comment we got, somebody made, I think it was you, Dave, as soon as you get that diagnosis, you start thinking about a job. And we're at the end, or going to be at the end of our time in this life. What's going to happen to our kids after we leave? And that certainly was in our case. Our son, Austin, who's now 34, he's in his 30s, which is close enough as a parent. Get Father of the Year for he can get in the right decade at one point. But anyway, so Austin is about, I think he's 32, maybe he's 32. Anyway, every day is a dream. Austin has autism. He didn't speak till he was about 10. And I'm thinking all that time, wondering what we're going to do. And I started working for Walgreens in 90, and then 95, I became in charge of supply chain. Big job. Austin was about 9 at that time. Now, what was driving me was going into those special ed classes, because he went into the program at age 3, early childhood program, which a lot of kids do. And at that time, they let all the parents come in. So I got to know all these kids. And so I was thinking, gee whiz, poor me, I've got a child with autism. I got to see lots of kids that didn't have autism, had all kinds of challenges. And I looked through that classroom and I went, my God, what are we going to do? What are their parents doing? You know, we're just trying to hang on with as much as we can, saying, what are we going to do? We're not alone in this. It's not just about autism. There's all kinds. So in 95, I made a great speech. I had all the managers in and I said, we ought to do something. Maybe we work with high schools or something. Not much came of that, but it was a damn good speech. I kind of remember it. And then we said, we got to be a little more concrete about this. So maybe we can go out and get some people for non-mission critical work, and they bring in their own people with disabilities with their own management, and be tagging or something like that. And we did that. And it worked pretty well. And everybody thought we were fantastic corporate citizens. Like we were getting awards and getting calls, and oh, you're just so great, you're doing all this. We realized that they were not really like our employees. We kept saying they were like our employees. We gave them T-shirts like ours, and we gave them name tags, but they really weren't. They weren't making the same pay. They weren't doing the same jobs, and they really weren't us. So came along in about 2002, we were planning a new distribution center. We've been building all these distribution centers across the country. That was a time when Walgreens was really growing. And we thought maybe we can, if we're going to design the building, maybe we can just tweak it. Because we're not going to pay any more money to do this, because we can't say we're going to pay more money, but maybe we can just tweak it. And maybe to enable a large number of people with disabilities to work. Because what had happened, we had hired some of those people from those enclaves that brought inside, and they were very successful. And so we said, we'll just take that same little model. We asked for volunteers to be peer mentors. We'll use that same model. And because we usually use 2 mentors to each person with a disability, we said, gee whiz, we're going to hire 600 people in this building. Why don't we use the same model? So why don't we have 200 people with disabilities, 2 typically able people for each person with a disability, like we did before. Nobody had ever done anything like that. But we decided that our kind of thinking was, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. We don't know if we'll get to 200 people. Nobody had ever done it in the world. We went around and talked to all kinds of people, but what happened is it did work. We found some good partners in that building.
Well, we found same performance, better safety, better attendance. We used to say, this is the workforce that comes in the day after the Super Bowl. This is what we say today. This is a workforce that shows up in COVID. This is a workforce that still shows up. So, and one of our tenets was we were going to give it away. And we were going to open, we were always secret about our stuff. So, but we said, this is bigger than a competitive advantage of any kind. So we gave it away. We've had hundreds of companies literally come in, and we did workshops and gave it away. And a lot of companies launched their own initiatives. Best Buy, UPS, Crown Equipment, Toyota. I mean, it's probably 50 companies that have done that. And then we also rolled it out to all our other centers. We realized it wasn't about the design of the building. It was about the desire to do it and the willingness to do something differently. And now that workforce is 20% of Walgreens' entire logistics workforce. It's 2,000 plus people. And in the stores, we set a goal in 2009 that 10% of all our new clerks in our stores would be people with disabilities. I don't know where that stands now, but that's since we hire about 50,000 people a year. Well, no, we probably don't hire that much. Probably at least 10,000 a year. That would be a pretty big number every year. So that has kept me busy. Since 1995, I'm an overnight success. And Austin is now 30. We all agree he's in his 30s. One of the companies that took this model is Meyer. And so Austin, and when the CEO called me, when they opened a center in Wisconsin, which is about an hour, 10 minutes for us, said, I don't know where Austin lives, but he would like to be one of our first employees. So Austin drives each way every day, and he was working at Meyer for like 4 years. Now, this is what parents think. I remember when Austin got his driver's license. I thought that was the equivalent of our other daughters getting summa cum laude from MIT, to have a driver's license. But to have a job, that's like a Nobel Prize. So him having a job, and oh, by the way, I would have never dreamed that we did something in one field and it had a benefit over here. That amazed me. So we did that. I continue to do that. Walgreens still hosts that, and we try to get other employers to do it. Another thing I'm working on for the last 3 years, we have a jobs program for students with disabilities. I found this in Canada, in Sarnia, Canada, right across from Detroit. I've been doing it for 20 years. What we do is we go into the town and we asked employers, give us a summer job for, say, a freshman college student. And if you're hiring people, give us a 6-week job. And what we'll do is we'll put a college student on that job. And we'll find a great one, kind of like your son, Dave. Charlie's like one of these great kids we found that wanted to do this. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a college student on the job, but we're going to put a student with a disability age 16 to 21 with them. And between the two of them, the two are going to perform as good or better than somebody you'd hire off the street. And here's the deal. We'll pay for the college student. You pay the student with a disability. Now, we've run it for 3 years. All the employers have loved it. And it has 3 goals. One, and we have to tell parents this, number 1 goal is to create a change in employers' minds about people with disability, because a lot of these kids are not going to be traveling across the country to find a job. They're going to stay in the community. So how can we create opportunities in the community? That's number 1. And the second goal is to give the kids the skills. So imagine starting at age 16 and having a different summertime job every year for 6 years, and then they age out of the system, at least in Illinois. Man, that'd be great for a kid without disabilities, but to have that experience and development. And we've seen these kids change. And then the third goal is these college students, they get an experience like they've never had before. And as they grow up and they get in positions of authority, they've seen this to create the need. That's what that program is. And we raise all the money locally. And it's pretty easy to raise money for. We train coaches in 2 weeks. We have 6 weeks. We have a party and get ready for the next year. This year we had to cancel it because of this darn COVID. But that's my story. Most of it is true.
Randy, that's fabulous. Thanks for sharing. And just to recap, you cut your teeth on a large scale at Walgreens. And if I remember what you said, you started with 200 employees at the first 600 in Anderson, South Carolina. And now the company is up to about 2,000 employees in their distribution centers and has a commitment to hire a certain percentage of their employees with disabilities on an ongoing basis. And then since you've retired and you're not actively involved with Walgreens, you've helped create programs like the one locally here in our community that provides individuals both with disability and sort of their able-bodied counterparts to learn about what this is all about, so that it'll empower them, all of them, to be more prepared as they move into the workforce and take on positions of responsibility. So very inspiring. So thanks again for sharing. This is the portion of our Zoom call that we open it up to Q&A. And what I'd like to do is start off the Q&A and ask each of you for one, no more than two very specific ideas about advice that you could provide to parents of, say, teenagers or any age, maybe super young kids as that well. What advice would you give a parent who's got this on their mind? What can they do to better prepare their child for the workforce? What opportunities can you share? And we'll go in the same order that we made the presentation. So Michael, we'll start with you.
Wow. Well, Randy, Jose, great. That's awesome. So inspiring, because one of the visions we have, real quickly, is that what we have here would be production and training, and then we open little storefronts around us to where, once trained and educated, they go close. The special needs individual goes closer to home to work, and then we also can partner with more partners in those local communities and create a template that then could be replicated in other counties, other states, what have you. But back to your question, Randy, as far as what advice do I have to parents with younger, older, or aging out to prepare them for the workforce is, wow. I didn't have a book. None of us had a book. We just, we cared so much about our kids that we took what was our passion or what was our goals and dreams to provide them with that. And I would just say that the best thing you can do is don't handicap your own child. Just because your child has a handicap, don't treat him that way. Growing up, my son Bradley, I got a lot of people were like, "Why do you treat him like that? Why you're a little hard on him and what have you?" It's like, I'm not going to handicap my child. He's going to learn right from wrong. He's going to have a good set of morals. He's going to, be as productive as he possibly can with the skill set that he has. I don't have, massive words of wisdom, David. But I would say, don't handicap your child. Just be open to what their abilities are, what are they good at. Every child has something that really sparks their attention, that really ignites a fire. And it can be something even like, believe it or not, a video game. I'll use Jose, SAP. It's a software company, programming and things of that nature. We have a young man with autism here that he has low stamina, was pretty sharp. We tried to use him up front, but what we found was he just wanted to be on his phone and on the computer. So we kind of tapped into, he's learning how to do social media for us. So maybe as a parent, just be open to, what exactly is my child excited about? What really fires them up? Is it music? Is it, cooking? Is it that computer or the technology? And then just see, how can you adapt that? How can you use that to start honing in on a skill set that you can grow? You can find the right, classroom settings. You can find the right day programs, or even local individuals by talking with businesses that, I had one where I got a kid that loves to shred paper. So, I told a local chiropractor, I said, "Dude, who are you paying to shred your documents? Are you paying a big company like Shred It? Not that that's bad, but hey, hire this guy that loves to sit in front of a shredding machine and shred. He can't read. And then you don't have a privacy issue." So I don't know, I kind of went all over the place there, but I would say just kind of hone in on your child's passions, be open, and just see, how can you use that to mold them into a future position, because there are so many types of jobs out there. you know, from the computer programming, the software technology, the skills like welding. You might be surprised. I've got some guys and gals here. There's a kid we have now that he's environmental spatial. I can't even pronounce it. He's a lot smarter than I am, but he talked at our latest gala and then was approached by Georgia Power. They want to give him an intern program. So it's just kind of be supportive, be open, see what their passion truly is, what sparks it, and just kind of go with that.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael, for sharing. The first piece of advice you gave was the one that resonated strongly with me, which is don't handicap your child. You can say that of any child, typical or atypical. So thanks for sharing. Jose, over to you.
Absolutely. Before I go there, and answer that question, I want to just share a very quick anecdote that I think it's a wonderful, at least for me, it was a wonderful experience. Last year when we had the Autism at Work Summit at the Ernie Els Center of Excellence in Florida, we had about 400 people, approximately 75 companies, nonprofits. We had universities, in government, etc. It was a big event. So we invited Randy to come in and do a presentation for us, one of the keynotes. And Randy did a fabulous job. And he was showing some pictures of basically the journey, that he had been in. And he talked about a young man by the name of Chuck. And I almost, jump off my seat because many years after Chuck had been with Randy in an assembly line type of, I hope I'm expressing it correctly, Randy, but it was an assembly line job. He left, and many years later, he came to the SAP Autism at Work program as an accountant, to try to get a job at SAP. Completely disconnected events in a completely separate timeline, where he was very young when he did this with Randy's support, and then he came to SAP. He did not get a job at SAP, but I know that he got a job somewhere, and that's what is important. So I thought I'd share that because it was just such a special moment for me when I saw Randy presenting. I saw Chuck's face, much younger than when I met him, and seeing a little bit of his journey, that it was just an incredible experience. But to answer your question, David, I'm going to I'm going to repeat what Michael said. And Michael, thank you again for everything you do. I'm going to call you and ask you for the secret sauce to open one of those companies where I live in Austin. But I would say that passion is extremely important. When my son was very young, he still loves trains. Is his passion, trains. And he would go to school and he had a train in his hand when he was in grade school, and he would go to high school and he had a train shirt. And when he got to be a certain age, he wanted to take, ride on the trains. And when he was 13, he actually rode on a tourist railroad that we have here in Austin, Texas, goes back and forth about 20 miles. And he absolutely loved it. And they had a sign there that said, register to be a volunteer. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for him. So we came in and knocked on the door and we said, can you get us a volunteer opportunity for me and my son? We both want to be part of this. And they said, how old is your son? He is 14. And he said, well, he's going to have to wait until he's 16, to be able to participate. So we waited, and I kid you not, when he was 16 that day, he said, I'm ready. Let's go and get the job, right? So we went out there, and the experience that he gained was incredible. He stuttered, had some challenges in addition to being on the spectrum. And the day that we arrived after we got the training, we got to go in a car, and he was supposed to go with me. We had our red vest and white shirt, welcoming passengers into the train as volunteers. And that day, one of the volunteers did not show up. So what did they do? They gave Jose the megaphone, the microphone thingy that you carry to make the announcement. And they gave him the sheet and said, you're going to go to car A, your dad stays in car B, you make the announcements over there. No questions asked. He probably started his way through it for 10 minutes when somebody would have delivered the message in 3. But what I heard was that he got a round of applause. And it was the first time that people actually passed the cup. and made donations to the train. He came out of that experience extremely proud, and we did that for a number of years. His best friends were 60 and 70 and 80-year-olds, okay? But he had friends, okay? He had that experience. He gained incredible skills, motor skills, and serving sodas in a moving train, okay? Being a waiter that he would have never been able to get. My point is that if you have an opportunity to have your son or daughter volunteer for something, it's an incredible way to get the skills that they need. Somebody will be grateful for that time, and they will be learning a whole lot about that. The other thing that I learned when he was in high school and when my daughter was in high school was that there was a passion also for either was railroads or Japanese animation or science fiction movies, and getting them involved in those clubs and getting to go out and getting to make some friends and playing video games with them, even though they may be playing from their own homes, was a sense of community already. And it was so enriching for their high school experience. I was contacted by somebody recently who told me, well, but my son's high school or daughter's high school doesn't have a program like anime. And I said, well, maybe it's a good idea for your son and your daughter to maybe put out a flyer at the school and go into those leadership skills and say, I'm going to be the founder of the anime club in the high school. And they did, and they got 15 kids within 2 weeks, you know. And now that kid has a sense of community as well, okay? So I think it's important for us as parents to the capacity, to the capability that our kids have to coach them and steer them and say, you can do this, and if you have a passion for it, you know, somebody will follow, okay? That's been my experience. So again, in summary, if I had to say something, is echoing on what Michael said, feed the passion, okay? Don't starve it, feed that passion, okay? I think it's extremely important. Channel the passion. Try to find a volunteer opportunity if you can in the line of interest that they have. And then the last one, if they are still in the school system, and if there's a club that they can belong to, invite them to participate in that. And if there's not one, ask them to create one. Yeah, it goes a long way.
Excellent. Thank you, Jose. Very inspiring. Randy, back to you.
Okay, doke. Well, if in case my mic doesn't work, I have one suggestion, is to everybody go to Barrington Hidden Talents. Barrington, B-A-R-R-I-N-G-T-O-N. That's the summer jobs program. I would suggest start that in your community because it's so much easier working on creating opportunities for people who want to hire than it is to try to figure out how, parents want to go to employers and say, please hire my child. Employers don't care about your child. They got jobs. They just want people that can do the job. So, I would suggest doing that, and it's a lot of fun, and it will change minds and create opportunities. It's a positive cycle. I think what we've learned, I wanted Austin. Austin was really good. I knew he was really good at memory because he could remember the color of the putt-putt balls we'd played with from summer to summer. And so what would he be good at? So I tried to get him to count cards, but he didn't have any interest in that. So we had to go with plan B. Now here's my conclusion. Austin works at a Meyer distribution center. When he first started working, he didn't make rate. He wasn't performing that well. And they didn't have that many people with disabilities. So I went up there to meet with them. And so I sit down with the GM and the head of HR, and they say, well, first of all, does Austin like to do this job? Is this where his passion is? And I said, no, I don't think so. And they said, well, he shouldn't work here then. I said, whoa. Austin's exceptional because he would tell you he didn't like it. You go out there and talk to all those rest of those guys who are working out there, and they're having to pick cases up that weigh 75 pounds and stack them on a place, and it's 30 degrees, and they have to do that all day, and you work them overtime all day on call. How much do you think they really like it? They just have the skills not to tell you they don't like it. So why are they staying and why is Austin staying? It's the relationship he has with the other people. And we think about our own jobs. What was the best jobs we had? Because we worked with great people that trusted us and all those things. So what we learned to make a person with a disability successful, sure, there's some certain intellectual and cognitive things they got to have and motor stuff, but mostly we have to learn what motivates them and to see them as people. And in the process, we were the ones who were changed. The reason all these other centers started doing this was not because their hearts got bigger, is because they realized it changed the way they managed and it made them more engaged and the work took on meaning. I mean, we're typically able to benefit from this. I mean, that's the thing that people with disabilities bring to the workplace that nobody else can. And once we did that, one of the things we noticed, first thing we noticed in South Carolina, oh, by the way, everybody's cafeterias are self-segregated around race. And nobody talks about that, but that's clearly the norm. That was the first thing we noticed. They no longer self-segregated. Because I think, and I speculate, I'm trying to mind read here, but once you see a person with a disability as a you, things like all the other things don't even matter. That's what happened. That's the gift our children can bring. That's the importance they bring to the world. It's $1 million experience for us parents. And that makes us better parents, and we wouldn't take $1 million to repeat the experience. But that's what they bring. That's what we've got to do. So everybody else is right. And I'm just glad I get to be with these guys. And Jose, oh, by the way, I was so glad to hear that story about Chuck. Oh, let me tell you, I'll finish the story about Chuck. Chuck was memorable to us because we learned his favorite color was purple. And can you hear it?
Yeah, purple.
Yes.
Purple, yeah, just like that. Because if you met Chuck, you'd be very happy about that. Because we discovered his color was purple because every time a purple plastic tote would pass through his area, he would stop and dance and start jumping up. Something we've never seen. So management got together and they said, well, is this appropriate for the workplace? Is this something that we can accommodate? And very quickly, they kind of went through it and said, okay, how's his performance? It's good. Well, which would we prefer? Dancing or complaining? Dancing. Let's go with dancing. What Chuck taught us is that performance comes in lots of different forms. And it opened our minds to, gee whiz, we'll do anything to make somebody successful as long as we can. And it opened us up, and it was Chuck who gave us the courage to go big at that site in South Carolina. I knew Chuck, we even invited him there and his parents. So you don't know what little effect you have here has there. And what's great about all these stories, you get in this business trying to help your kids get a job, you're going to meet a lot of other angels along the way, just like we did tonight. I mean, I didn't remember that story, Jose. That was a fantastic story. Is it true? I hope it's true.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I still remember. I will always remember because I feel it. I have this emotional memory when I go out and see you with his picture in the backdrop, and it's a special moment. Thanks, Randy.
So thank you for sharing, Randy. With our last few minutes, I'd like to open it up for questions. Anybody that has a question of Jose or Michael or Randy, now's an opportunity.
I have a question for Jose. He's in the Houston area, right?
Austin, Texas.
Austin. I misspoke. Austin, Texas.
Austin. Okay. Well, have you ever heard of the Brookwood community outside of Houston?
I don't think I have, Scott.
Google it because I've been talking about doing something like that for such a long time, and my wife finally found it, and she said, "You got to look at this thing." It's called the Brookwood Community and .org, and they're outside of Houston, and they have it's like a farm. They go out there, they plant stuff, they all do jobs, It's really cool. And, I'm getting jobs for people at a place and doing this and that. There's some, like Gloria wouldn't do a job. She needs somebody there, but to go to a place like this, check it out, because it's, if I had big bucks like David, I would do it, but I don't. So I would start a farm like this. It's kind of self-contained. Everybody has a job, and they go towards what they want to do. Like some plant gardens, some just create art, and then they sell the art. It's kind of a self-sustained thing, but it's really interesting. I just saw it in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I looked at it, but go look at that. What a great program. I'd like to see a bunch of those things.
I'll look it up for sure. Thank you for the reference.
Anybody else have a question? Just raise your hand. Okay. Unmute yourself.
Okay. This is great and it's wonderful. I guess my question is not to put a damper on anybody, but Alex can't. My son can't. He's 28. He has physical and mental disabilities. He has vision problems. He can't do this kind of stuff. I mean, we realized this a long time ago. We fostered what we can foster. We've done what we can do. But in realism, he can't. And there's a lot of kids out there that can't. And so with the government getting rid of piecemeal work, because God forbid they can't earn a minimum wage, even though they're happy what they're doing. Suggestions, thoughts, ideas? I mean,
Randy, can I chime in?
PJ, did you have a question, or you want to add a comment?
I was going to make a comment. I have an older sister who has cerebral palsy, a lot of the same mental and physical disabilities, and we thought the same thing. Like, we were talking with DARs and IEP meetings and stuff like that, and they were bringing these options to the table, and we were just like, these just aren't feasible. Like, she can't do these things. And then, it kind of occurred to us one day, her passion was making these pony bead bracelets. And so that she had something to do, so that she had a purpose, we started a business for her. And, she sells the bracelets on the website. We've been going at it for 2 years now. So my suggestion would be, if he has a passion or anything like that, I mean, I know somebody said it earlier, like if it's like video games or something like that, then, you could try to find something, that kind of
it's
that passion.
We've done some of that. He does alcohol coasters that we've been selling at some craft shows. Mm-hmm. Problem is the having the movement of the air and the circulation without us all passing out with the alcohol and the sprays kind of kills us in the winter in Illinois. And my wife won't let me do it. She doesn't want to get high. So, but so we've done some of that, but he really enjoys going to his workshop. He really enjoys going to little city countryside, but it's just with all that going away, all this push is for independence. And a lot of our kids, a lot of his friends can't do it. And it's just very frustrating. It's frustrating from the standpoint of, no offense to anybody, and please don't take it that way. Everybody seems to hear the autistic world saying, hey, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. But nobody seems to hear the other end of the spectrum that says safety, abilities, our kids can't do that. We need to work within the other part of the system, and they're eliminating that system. So I don't know if anybody's got thoughts or knows anybody that,
No. I have a comment about that.
Yeah.
Well, I think, the pendulum always goes too far. The problem with sheltered workshops, they were keeping a lot of people that could be out of there, and they were, keeping them. So we need to take that. That's an abuse.
Yes.
Because
100%.
Sheltered workshops do have a place. You just named it right there. There's some people, they have this great social place. They participate as humans into it. Oh, by the way, they don't have to make minimum wage to do it. All that kind of stuff. So, I mean, the pendulum swung too far. I have a friend out in Seattle who had a bunch of sheltered workshops, and they closed them all down except like 2. And because he said, I could not do it. I could not face those parents because these kids will never be in competitive employment.
Right.
And I think they're still running. I mean, we just got to fight for those where they need to be.
Yeah.
Because they do have a role. They do
Yeah.
have a role. I mean, this takes the whole spectrum for the solutions. But too many were left behind out of competitive employment. But you can't say everybody can be in competitive.
Right.
It's got to have common sense to it.
And that's what we're hearing. That's what everybody is saying is,
Yeah.
well, anybody can have a competitive job. Anybody can do this. I own a Hallmark store. I've tried to hire kids to just sit there and count cards and put envelopes with them that their parents said they can do it. They can do it. I was paying somebody $8 an hour to count the same 4 feet of cards for 8 hours a day and then go back the next day and do the same ones.
Right.
I mean, that kind of person, you know, it just doesn't exist. They need to be doing something else, you know,
Right.
and it has swung. It swings way too far.
And we have parents who think their child is a genius or I mean, we got both ends of the spectrum on that too. I mean, there's not an easy answer to this, but I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Tony, the one thing that worked for us, and for example, my son, I don't think that he will be working for a company like SAP. Okay. And certainly, I think that, as Randy says, there's a place for everybody somewhere. And what we found was that there were some jobs at the government level, and he applied through what they call Schedule A. And I don't know if you have heard about that, but it's a special schedule in the government that allows you allows a person with disability to apply for a job without going through the standard interview process. And they have a very minimal interview process, which was very beneficial for my son. And he is doing stamping, okay, and envelopes and filing and things of that nature. And he's been at it for about 3 years. It's a seasonal job. It's a permanent but seasonal. Mm-hmm. And so he doesn't get to work the entire year. And that's worked out really, really well for him. It's something that is his, and he enjoys it, and he does it. The other thing that I was going to suggest is, I mean, and you probably have seen, we've talked about it, and Michael can probably tell us more about that. It's also the self-employment angle. Okay, we've seen some successes out there in that space, and I think that PJ just mentioned a very, very successful story, but it's not for everybody as well. Okay, so anyway, I hope that those two pieces help a little bit.
I think it's great and it's wonderful. The problem is he needs somebody with him all the time to keep him on task, to worry about safety. I mean, he functions at, a first or second grade level. So you put him as a greeter at Walmart, let's say, and who knows who's going to walk away with him or push his wheelchair. He's got no thought process what's right or wrong at that point. And I'm sure, Walmart's not going to want to hire somebody to stand with my kid 8 hours a day and double pay somebody to say, hi, welcome to Walmart. It just doesn't work that way. It's just, it's rough. And and I hear more and more about pushing, like you said, anybody can have a job, but we need to worry about the other kids too, somehow.
Most certainly.
Good.
Yeah.
One last question. Do we have any more questions that we can ask our presenters to respond to?
Yeah, actually, if I could real quickly, Tony, this is Michael.
Yeah, Michael.
This might sound low, but we put out on our placard, it's not about the income, it's about the impact.
Right.
As I stated earlier, we take first come, first serve, but we are a nonprofit. So we're not focused on that bottom line. And we have a couple of folks that do require someone full-time, to where we have volunteer job coaches, or you might call them a parapro, like they had at school, but someone who can help them fold the towel, who can help them peel a sticker, someone who is there constantly to keep them on task and stay focused. And I agree. That's part of the big problem is we hear a lot of companies say, oh, we hire special needs, but they're only hiring the 20% higher functioning.
Right.
There's 80% of that sector out there that are not going to get those opportunities. And I said that earlier in my presentation, was that 80% of my folks right now, 80% of my 29 that are employed are not going to have opportunities anywhere else. because people are not going to, when they're looking at the black and they want to see profits, they're not going to take the time to hire someone else. I think what Randy did with Walgreens is amazing. And that model works for certain individuals.
Right.
I don't know to what depth, because I've not ever actually got an opportunity to talk to Randy yet. That's my fault. So I don't know if they're dealing with someone with CP in a wheelchair, nonverbal, that has some limitations to their motor skills that really, honestly, they can't even go to the bathroom themselves. They can't feed
Right.
themselves. Those are the individuals that we try to incorporate here, and it has opened up the eyes to some of our other employees, some of what you would call neurotypical, that our adult volunteers and parapros, they're interacting with them. They're seeing this, and then how can we take that over to the workplace? You're right. There, some of our folks are not going to go get a job somewhere unless it's something like a nonprofit, or, I was always against my son going to a sheltered workshop. I called it a sweatshop. I said, look, you're paying this kid 7 cents for,
Right.
8 hours of work. It's slave labor, but it does have a place. As Randy said earlier, those have a place for some individuals, but I don't have a magic answer for you, bud.
No, I wish you were in Illinois, because even with 200 people, I go on your waiting list. But,
Yeah.
Well, let's connect the two of you, because I know Michael wants to replicate his program in different parts of the country. And it just takes somebody with the right attitude and the right passion and focus to try to connect those dots. And it would be thrilling to help be a catalyst for making that happen. So let's make sure the two of you can connect outside of this call.
Okay, cool.
Randy, did you want to say anything about the employees that you hired and their scope or range of ability?
Well, I don't, a lot of our jobs are physical. So a person, we have people in wheelchairs, but they're doing managerial work or something like that. We have all kinds. We have a good thing about our work. We haven't found yet a specific disability that we would exclude automatically, because everything's a range. Even, CP and everything's a range. So yeah, we got people with CP. In the deeper end of the pool, we don't have people that are nonverbal and have those kind of challenges, but we have people with CP, we have people with mental illness, we have all kinds of things. Can't hire all the people with mental illness, can't hire all the people with autism.
Right.
It's, that does, but the great thing, we got to create more opportunities for them too. We got to work on both ends of this thing. Here's the good news. The situation is so much better than it was 10 years ago, and certainly better than it was 20 years ago. And I know, because I've been working in it that long. And until we had COVID stop everything, it was the best of times for getting people with disabilities hired, because nobody could find dependable help. And when they found people with disabilities, it changed their mind about all people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
It changed our mind about what we thought we could do. We got in, we said, gee whiz, we could do this. We never hired part-time people. Yeah, maybe we can. It has been, the future is a lot better than the past. I'm convinced of that. It's not going to come fast enough for us parents, because we got limited time, but the long-term prognosis, I'm convinced, is better.
Okay, well, let that be the last word on employment opportunities. I want to thank our presenters, Michael, Jose, and Randy, for your time and valuable insights. Very inspirational. I'd also like to thank Tom Couch for being our Zoom host. And I always wrap up these Zoom calls with a little information. So the next Zoom call is going to be on July 21st. The topic is going to be siblings and family balance. It's another really important topic for those families raising more than one child and having to balance between their child with typical ability and atypical ability. So please direct your attention to July 21st. We also have a dad's Facebook group, a closed Facebook group. So if you haven't already subscribed, please join us on the Special Fathers Network closed Facebook group. many of you have listened to the podcast and been inspired. And I neglected to mention that the three fathers included in tonight's Zoom call, Michael, our first presenter, was podcast interview number 77. Randy was literally podcast number 2. And Jose is going to be podcast number 106 coming out on this Friday. So I want to thank you guys for the interviews that you've done to help perpetuate the Dad to Dad podcast. And then beyond that, the whole idea behind the Special Fathers Network was to match dads, more seasoned dads, most of the dads on the call, with dads with the special needs. So we encourage you to help us identify those young fathers. That seems to be the most challenging aspect of building a Special Fathers Network. Getting these young families to embrace the isolate yourself, not to withdraw, and to get over some of the hurdles that we each face as parents when there's adversity. And lastly, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3. We're 100% funded by private donations. So if you have the ability to support the cause, I would be very grateful for your support. And in closing, I'd like to just say thank you to our volunteer board. Thank you to Tom Couch. Thank you to today's presenters. We simply could not have done this without you. With that, I'll say have a great week, and I hope to see you guys on one of the next Zoom calls or be involved in another way.
Hi, David.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Adios.